Over 78 hours, in over 130 gaming sessions, on the timeline of over 6 weeks. Looking at the length of my notes, this might be the longest article I have ever written about video games so far. Dragon Age Veilguard. This one stirred up some real controversies on the internet when it released not so long ago. 2 months before the end of 2024 to be exact. Let's put aside all that for a moment. First, we need to establish my history with Dragon Age series, so you have an idea where I'm coming from in this review. So, I played and really enjoyed Dragon Age Origins, of which there is a review as well on my channel. Unfortunately, I bounced right off from Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition, mainly because I was not keen on the gameplay proposed there. So I uninstalled both of them after a very short while in combat. We talking maximum of 1 hour here. Maybe I will try them again someday and convince myself to get used to its flaws. Ironically enough, it is the combat that kept me in Veilguard to see it all through. It is quite the opposite to the one I known and loved in Origins, but it was good enough and to my taste nonetheless, but more on that later. The important thing here is that my connection to the Dragon Age series is kinda in the middle of the road. I finished 2 of 4 games and abandoned the 2 others. I am not very emotionally attached to any game series that I played. I critique every game on its own merits and flaws. So, what do I think about the newest entry in this well-known series? Well, you're gonna need to watch this or even just listen to the whole review, because this is a very intricate and delicate subject to discuss. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Starting with a story as always. Firstly, the main plot is in order to talk about. I was very optimistic at the very beginning of the journey presented in this title. Intro was pretty good, fun, dynamic and enjoyable. You get to know the gist of what's going on pretty fast, even if you haven't played nor followed in any other form the events from previous games. When everything cools down, we get settled in our base of operations, from where we get going into the fray of adventure, meeting new characters quite often. It all seems fine and dandy, but it all goes down the drain and rolls downhill pretty fast, and I will tell you exactly why. It may take me some time, mind you, to explain it all well enough, for you that haven't played the game yet, and for those who have, you will know what I mean well before I finish this review. So, the first problem with the main story is a very simple one, and funnily enough it reminds me of cheap TV shows during my youth, and it goes something like this. Too many times we engage and disengage with our targets during the main campaign. It frustrated me to no end. "We need to locate our enemies," they say. "You idiots, you just run from them, what the heck?" "Our true enemy is yet to reveal himself." It seems like our team is our true enemy in this story. But wait, there is more. Near the ending of the main storyline, there is a very cheap plot twist placed, and I hated it. This is one of the worst things writers could have done. And it's even worse because then all the characters in our party are acting like the unfortunate plot twist never happened. Which is odd, cause the preparation scenes before the final assault, where you assign your party members to your allies, were one of the best I've seen. This is unholy levels of uneven storytelling, let me tell you that much. The ending to the story, even when expected, still disappointing somehow, and the traditional RPG slideshow which shows the consequences of our choices and actions is somehow much worse than in first 2 Fallout games, and they were made almost 3 decades ago. Let that sink in. All in all, the concept for a main story plot was good in foundations, but writing and execution of it was done poorly, so it falls on its face and there is no redeeming it whatsoever. So maybe the side stories are way better, you may naively wonder. I need to extinguish your enthusiasm there, my sweet summer child. It is more of the same. Yes, there are some stories that can be described as much better than the rest, but these are few and far between. I found the best side content was about the demons and deals that mortals do with them. It is always interesting. Same was with Deadras in Elder Scrolls series, and the ending of the game would suggest that we're gonna get more of that in the future expansion for the game. But I doubt I'll be playing it, as I, in almost all cases, bounce off from returning to the game in those expansions. The only exception to that rule being World of Warcraft, but that's a whole another story that I told many times already, and unavoidably I will tell again sooner or later. As such is fate of an internet boomer. Getting back to the subject at hand, many times it felt like the game was out of its place with side stories, like the early 20th century cliché with piano and female vocalist in the classic lab. I mean, like, what is this? To add to these weird annoyances, the game copies the grave mistakes of its many RPG predecessors, meaning even if NPCs treating us and talking to us like we were the chosen one, we still get treated as an errand boy as well. Same old story, yeah. We establish that the main story and side quests are not of the best quality, so is there any hope left there? Well, in RPGs we can always rely on characters created by writers to be the strong point of the title, and make it worth playing. So how are they written here? Let me tell you just about that. Several hours into the game and I still didn't know who the hell Rook, the character that we play as, even is. All I knew was that he has an option for wondering his gender identity in the mirror that he got from his dwarf friend Varric. What in the actual? Besides, whole Rook name sucks bollocks, because it sounds the same as abbreviation from rookie, so basically we are diminished in most conversation that we have. What a stupid idea someone had. And since he was nothing to me, it was very strange how many powerful characters in the game world treated Rook like he was the most important person in the entire world. There were plenty of characters from previous games, but since I haven't played fully or even extensively second and third one in the series, I don't know many of them at all. Okay, but let's start with our main antagonists here, because they are brand new to the series if I understand correctly. We hear those two names over and over again in dialogues, yet I cannot remember them exactly. Elgenan and Gillanay. Troll me sideways, but someone messed up royally here, or maybe I'm just getting old in rapid pace and dementia is getting hold on me. Who knows? I cannot recall any names exactly besides Rook and Hardin, which are easy and good sounding names, despite what I said just about how I feel about Rook. The rest, not so easy to remember. I was thinking about describing each party member, but that is one of the attractions in the game as you progress, so I'll just tell they are an odd bunch, and each of them got their background story, motivations and problems. It was done well enough to hold my interest. My favorite side character in our little party was Emric. He was very fleshed out with believable origin story, very human fears and aspirations. Very well written, I was impressed. Rest of them were fine, nothing special really. They fitted into their classical stereotypes, which was kinda disappointing, considering that writers and developers of this game try to picture themselves as very progressive people. I guess progressive in all the wrong places, because I do not see it reflected in the creative aspect, which is the most important in, well, creating something. Let me show you where the problem lies with our protagonists. The world, as our characters know it, is coming to an end, yet somehow everybody has time to keep us busy with their petty personal affairs. Even worse, writers used it as a plot device in order to force us, the players, to do mandatory companion side missions, so we cannot choose to skip them. We need to deal with all their problems, fears, distractions, roadblocks, make them dinner. Wait, what? I guess NPCs' feelings are more important than saving the world they live in. This is bollocks to the square. It's the first time I've seen something like this, and I truly hope it is the last time as well. This is simply unacceptable. Another thing is that all the female romance options are not attractive to me. I don't know what the heck. for there not to be even one remotely alluring female. Don't know about the male options, as I physically cannot view them in that context. Not a big waste for me, as I suck at romancing both in games and in real life. Which reminds me that I've got a date on Sunday. I should prepare for that instead of writing this. But, well, I guess I cannot fight with my destiny as a not-so-successful writer. What was I saying? Ah, yes. All in all, I did romance Bellara, or whatever her name was, that clumsy veil jumper interested in history of elven people. Her people. I guess she was least annoying for me from all of them, and I wanted to see how the romance would evolve in this one, to review every aspect of the game that I can. It was kinda bumpy and very teenager and idealistic, but overall the whole thing was okay. Luckily for me, they made it simple to choose romantic option in this one. All you need to do is to choose the dialogue options marked with a heart. I like it like that. No games, no BS, simple and effective. I need to try it in real life. Seems like a good idea, right? Another one is a bust for me, and I do not know how to handle it. But let's just try. So, one of the characters is exploring the fact that she is transgender or something. I don't know enough about these kind of things, but our hero and other characters in party agree to call her them moving forward. That was weird, but not as uncomfortable as I thought it would be. Don't know what to think about it honestly, because I never knew anyone like that in real life, so I can't really tell if it was done right or wrong. For sure, it ruffled many feathers in YouTube reviewer sphere, as it always does. Okay, an update on the whole thing. As later on we witness that character's confrontation with their mother, and it was as uncomfortable as it gets. I felt like watching a cringe scene from a very bad movie, bloody hell. And then, when one random NPC during conversation tells us out of nowhere that he used to talk with his friend and teacher about non-binary stuff, it was kinda too much for me in one game. To make it all worse, that lazy dwarf Varric is laying in bed, faking leg injury so he can avoid all this bullcrap. There is an explanation for his behavior nearing the end of the game. Getting back to the romance thing for a second again. When two of my party companions started to romance each other, the conversation that set it all in motion, I got a heart attack from cringe, which I would never suspect was possible, and bloody hell, so many of them romance other characters. That is really not what I need in my RPG sessions. Not mentioning the same-sex couples. Oops, I guess I just did. To be completely honest with you, all of our companions are kinda unlikable. I had no favorites, so every time the game asked me to pick one or two of them for a mission, I rolled the dice in true RPG fashion. To make things even worse, our main character that we play as is also unlikable. Just great. I know, this time around the story section of a review is very long, but, wait for it, it's gonna be even longer. There is an important reason for that, as the latest Dragon Age game needs additional discussion about the writing quality. But first, the word from our sponsor. Just kidding, there is no sponsor here. No, firstly the main problem is with dialogue options. It is the same as in many games before. You choose an option and your character says something completely different. What an annoyance. I was always of the opinion that dialogue options in games are for one reason only, to choose what you want to say, and when your character says something different, the whole purpose of the mechanic is lost in the abyss of nonsense. Another thing would be that oftentimes many names are repeated during dialogues. Writers were very afraid that audiences might not get some things, so they drive it home over and over again, but I am of the mind that have the opposite effect to the intended one. The best example would be that we time after time hear Elunar and Gilgamesh, or whatever they are called, to be referred as gods but not gods. I know what writers tried to do here, but they failed miserably, which is annoying to the people who have some knowledge on the art of writing, while all the others will be just confused. Another one is the fact that many characters that you meet and talk to know your name before it is spoken by someone else. Very big oversight in this regard. How about the other qualities of the text here? Not great either. In many instances we hear stupid jokes that sound modern and snarky. I didn't like that, as always in my fantasy. Vulgarity here is unnecessary and interjected in bad taste. I would rather not have it at all than used incorrectly. Oh man, I just scrolled my notes down and there is plenty more here. So maybe I will just rapid fire all the observations so we can all go home sometime today. If I was a teacher, I bet students would nickname me Professor Grumpy. And you know what? I would love that. Okay, let's go on with the show. I understand using Elvish or Dwarven language for some words or even sentences, but French? Give me a break. This really hurt the immersion for me. Also, so many times you hear grandeur speeches of how you are the only hope for this world and that so much depends on you, that I was sick of it very fast. Some dialogues are very uncomfortable, like the Griffon Daddy conversation or transgender talk. Sometimes it really made me want to close the game, but I plowed through all that. No sexual intent was behind this line. Damn it, I should have said powered through. If only there was some key to delete the not so good text and in its place put a better one. I guess most of writers on Veilguard project didn't know about delete and backspace keys either. What a shame. Next we got a T-Book Club talking about Dreadwolf's regrets. I could not see that coming at all. Hall of Valor challenges have no background nor lore to explain all the opponents you face. What a fail compared to the same content in other RPGs. Maybe you think all those were the minor ones and that I'm just mean-spirited and I'm picking on the game. Okay, let me give you something heavier. All the conflicts between members of our party seem to be forced as an excuse to preach to players how to behave. Apparently, writers think we are all children and we need to be taught how to solve our disputes in most delicate ways. Wait a second. When I think about it, maybe one of YouTube reviewers was right, and this game in some twisted way is targeting 12 years old girls. It seems that way, or maybe it is just the annoying millennial style of writing both jokes and serious lines, about which another well-known personality has spoken. So another one would be that oftentimes characters we come into dialogue with got information that they should not possibly have any access to. This is just bad. There is so many corrupted dragons in this one that I lost count and I didn't know which is which for the most part. I guess game is called Dragon Age for a reason. Blah! On the other note, beware of transgender mirror. Just run! Do not let it convince you that you are something else. On the more serious note though, the fact that they made Grey Wardens, which were, as I recall, ultimate heroes in Dragon Age Origins, into the bunch of sissies, is unforgettable. They look and act like clowns in Veilguard. All in all, I think writing is not very good here, and it holds back the rest of the game. It is an RPG after all, so it's hard to take it seriously if characters all around you are spewing nonsense. Another thing is that it all feels kinda soft. Instead of hardened by pain and misery silhouettes of real people of dark fantasy world, we got clowns, jokers and weaklings. What a disappointment. Strangely enough, there was at least one good writer in the team, as some parts are written brilliantly, well above the rest of the game, and it shows. I don't know who you are, but keep doing the good work even in the swamp you found yourself in. All the best from me to all the good writers who actually try their best to make the art of their craft for the people with love. And to rest of lowlifes that would rather smell their own farts and make unfunny jokes instead of learning from their better colleagues, shame on you. That's all I've got to say about that. Now let's move on to another section, which of course is gameplay. Yay! How could it be any other way? Fortunately, in this regard, Veilguard is looking much better. Alas, not without flaws, mind you. Starting with combat, which is much better than in Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition. I truly think so, even if it makes me a heretic in the eyes of Dragon Age fans. Many people whined that combat was too simple, but I kinda enjoyed it that way. It gave me vibes of both Elden Ring and World of Warcraft somehow. It was simple with clear rules, responsive controls and smooth animations. It was my favorite part of this game, even though I heard for some folks it was the worst one. I guess the old saying, different strokes for different folks, rings true here. There is a great feature where you can finish fights early if you manage to throw your opponents from edges and ledges. Reminds me of Baldur's Gate 3 mechanic, but in real time. Moreover, it was really satisfying when I accidentally started a fight with two bosses, each one from different quest and much higher level than myself. I thought I was doomed, but somehow playing diligently and somewhat skillfully, I managed to win an encounter against seemingly impossible odds. That's maybe the best aspect of the whole combat here. You can overcome higher level enemies if you play good. It kinda reminded me times when I played Witcher 3, and often found myself fighting against enemies way stronger than Geralt, yet ending up winning somehow. But dear lord, bosses with blocking mechanics are real pain in the ass to deal with in Veilguard. I would delete them all from the game, they bring nothing positive to the table, only frustration of needing to break their block over and over again, and that ain't no fun in my book. From other aspects, there are two companions that aid us in combat most of the time. They auto-attack on their own and use one autocast skill if you're talented into it. Rest of their abilities you're gonna need to activate manually. They are nicely divided into DPS/healer and DPS/tank categories, so you can use them for your builds and tactics, or, like me, just randomly select two of them at any given mission. Still, I miss full automatic tactics that you set beforehand, like it was in Dragon Age Origins. I guess those times are not coming back anytime soon. There is one big gripe with combat that I had though: difficulty levels. I played on standard option up to around level 35, and then I changed to custom setting where I pumped up enemy damage and aggression, but at the same time I lowered their health, while leaving vulnerabilities and resistances at standard, which I suppose is the best mix of combat settings. It makes enemies more dangerous but fights much shorter, because no one likes easy fights where your foes have seemingly endless health bars. As always, I would prefer that there was only one difficulty level, but what can you do? It's all fine and dandy, I hear you say, but what about the enemies? Are they any good, you may ask? Well, there are several types of enemies with different attacks, which are mostly very well telegraphed, so the combat seems fair enough. Sometimes the screen may get overwhelmed by the effect of abilities, especially chained ones, where there is plenty of pretty big explosions. Most types of enemies are fine, nothing really special here. Of course, the most annoying ones were, as always, those assholes with shields and blocking mechanics. When it comes to bosses, I had a very mixed experiences. Final fight with one of two main antagonists, Gillanay, was really underwhelming. It came to deal with her pawns in the typical gauntlet fashion, which I am not a fan of. I still got a PTSD from tanking trash packs in these kinds of fights, while playing World of Warcraft mostly. The other one from the duo, Elgenan, was not very good too, but still a bit better in design and fun aspects. To be completely honest, the best fights were with dragons. Even if repetitive, they had fun mechanics while avoiding annoying ones. Of course, there is more to the gameplay than combat alone. So, what is there exactly? For one, movement out of combat is really smooth for the most part, and I quite enjoyed the sliding mechanic. Feels nice, like in some high-budget action game, which this seems to be from what I can tell. Still, there is some junk in all of that, because camera auto-adjusts to my discontent, without option to turn it off that I could find. It was mostly annoying when traversing terrain. It seems to focus on passages and treasures. Gee, thanks game, like all the big icons and shining textures are not enough. Later in the game I discovered that I could just turn off most of the hints, so I did. I do not like when games treat me like an idiot. I forgot to mention that there are some camera problems in combat as well, because it seems to be focusing on the player model instead of enemies. On the other hand, camera is working spot on while in conversations, but well, it is easy when there is no player input, so that's that. What else? Ah yes, you steal and break stuff while NPCs, including guards, are watching and there are no consequences. It really feels anticlimactic. I heard it's supposed to be an RPG game. Maybe I heard wrong. Also, buying cosmetics from NPCs in the game world feels weird and out of place. I am not a fan of that at all. And you need to check every merchant along the way on your adventures, because many of them are selling items that are permanently boosting your stats and attributes like maximum health, resistances, etc. Scratch that actually, there is an annoying bug when you buy permanent stat upgrades, they disappear after you leave the game. This was a really big flaw for me, as I love to improve stats of my avatars in games. I guess if you are playing Dragon Age Veilguard, you can check it if it's fixed. Logic puzzles are very easy and boring. I swear to Holy Spirit, if I need to find another magic crystal to put it into the slot, I will. But wait a second, there was one puzzle that I actually enjoyed, that reminded me how it was back in old days. Open the Warden Vault, that was the name. This one was so good that took me some time to solve it. Later in the game there was another one, so 2 out of couple dozens is something, right? Moving on, let's talk about progression systems in the game. Armor progression is pretty good, but why in the hell my heavy armor warrior is running around barefoot? Okay, never mind, it was just heavy looking medium armor, but still. Some armor sets look amazing, while others not very enticing to say the least. Items are decently exciting for the most part. Some very nice synergetic builds can be done while picking the right skills and passives. One thing holds them back unfortunately, and that is enchanting system. Because we can't fully enjoy shiny new equipped items because at the back of our heads there is a sprinter that tells us that is not at full power until we enchant it in base of operations. This is simply disgusting mechanic in any game for that matter. Also, it kinda sucks that some important items tied to upgrade system are hidden in destructible objects because it makes you break all the barrels and crates on your merry way. I hate it when games do that. Additionally, some missions are played in the instance versions of locations that you, as I understand, cannot re-enter, so you need to be careful not to skip any good loot. So again, you focus on minor things instead of having fun and following stories to be told. Skill tree is fine and dandy. I enjoy building my heavy damage almost immortal sword and bolt tank. Why do I almost always choose a sword and shield characters in my video games? I'll need to see a psychologist to explore that, I guess. Nah, it will be fine. Of course, some builds can be very gimmicky, abusing potions and runes mechanics, but I guess it's like this in most build up your character games, so no big deal. Now, as in any game ever made, the one of the most important aspects are levels and or locations in which the action and or narration takes place. Someone could use the argument, what about the text games? I can see no locations there. No? Are you sure, my darling? I can see them clearly painted with words. In Dragon Age Veilguard, the locations were designed decently enough, although I would prefer if they were more open. Well, it was the same in Origins, and I guess in 2 others as well, so I can't complain. Wait, let me take that back. Of course I will complain, so hear the old boomer gamer like myself to tell you the truth. There is only one or at most 2 paths to your destinations every time, which makes it feel very linear and tunnely, which only exaggerates the previous point. And don't even get me started at the whole concept of crossroads, where you got gates to different areas, which is fine in itself, but still it feels weird, like a lobby multiplayer / single player game, which from what we heard this game's supposed to be, before it was turned back to the somewhat classical RPG, or at least that's what we thought. There is simply too many portals everywhere. The world feels like it was made for mages alone. At least those areas are somewhat vertical, which adds to the feeling of grandeur. Reminds me somehow of recently played Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2, out of all things. There is a twist to all of this, however. Bumping into locked door or hatch with red lock icon and the currently inaccessible text made me feel like I was in some kind of alpha or beta test. This should not happen, and navigation when retracking your paths for some side quests can be cumbersome at times for many reasons. So are there any positive aspects to the areas, locations and levels in the game? Well, yes. Necropolis Gardens location was really impressive. More of this please. Second best was Arlatan Forest. And nearing the end of my adventure, the entrance to one of the dwarven locations, with a view on snowy mountains. Someone really talented worked on those. Give them a raise or bonus, or just move them to another studio that will not be closed soon, like BioWare surely will after another failure. Still, all the locations feel like they were designed as a vehicle for a game, instead of being somewhat immersive and believable like it is done in so many good games. It would be much better if the game was divided into chapters, so we are only in one location at a time doing the main quest and side missions, and just then moving on to the next one. It would of course involve making locations bigger and more interesting, thus more expensive. When I think about it, it's really disappointing, so much wasted potential. And when I really think about it, then I realize that Veilguard plays more like an action game with RPG elements rather than true RPG from which its roots grow. Remembering how I felt playing first Neverwinter Nights in prehistorical times where BioWare was synonymous with good RPG, it breaks my heart, but more on that later at the end of the review. Because of course, before we wrap things up, we ought to talk about the technical side of this title. Graphically, overall, it all looks fine and new. I kinda enjoyed visual presentation even if sometimes it felt to be too clean and plasticky, if you know what I mean. Characters seem to be a little bit out of proportions. It showed the most in presentation of humans and elves. Kunari and dwarves looked better in that regard. While observing all kinds of characters in cutscenes though, I observed that lip-sync is worse than I expected from such a high-tier production, but still possible. Character creator seems to be very good, but my skills are so lacking in that regard that I made myself look like not myself, not even close. So I just did what any grown-ass man would do. I've put a beard on the face, called it a day and went along for adventure. Good thing there is a mechanic in game where you can edit your looks during the adventure time, because I started to notice in cutscenes that some details on the beard that I've chosen were annoying me, and considering the fact that I've put many hours into the game already, I was saved by that unrealistic mechanic, praise the Lord. Speaking of characters, their forearms look really weird, like they were modeled back in 1999. I guess one of the 3D modelers for the game was really old school. Sometimes game loads wrong level of detail version of object and it looks awful, especially if error occurred in the cutscene or dialogue screen, and even some distant mountains or other huge object look like they were loaded from late 90s game again. Maybe there really was some ninja developer that implemented it, in order to wink an eye to us, old school gamers of ancient times. Yeah, okay, but just positive side of my imagination goes wild, don't mind me. Also, there is a lot of noticeable pop-ins when you run around, which is always a bad thing. I remember Black Desert Online, when it was released, was considered as one of the best looking games ever, and it would be the best looking at the time if not for those pesky heavy pop-ins too near to the camera, especially when you were going fast on your horse. Bloody hell, how much I liked that speeding and drifting while on horseback. Good times. Another strange thing is that all doors open in low frame rate and I don't know why. Who the hell would approve that? The biggest downfall in graphical presentation in this title is the same as in many other nowadays. Unnecessarily blurred picture by using temporal techniques. I wish it would change in upcoming years. Yet some of the cutscenes are very impressive, especially those with heavy battles and or big monsters. So overall visual presentation is good, but with some minor and major flaws. When it comes to the performance, I mostly disagree with experts on that part. Don't get me wrong, they make some good points, but I finished the game with, I guess, all of the side content and I can tell you that it is not as good as you could conclude from limited testing alone. So the performance is very uneven, because in some places it is very fluid, while in others it is horrible with several times lower frames per second values. Should optimize some locations way more. Looking mostly at you, Aratan Forest. Moreover, CPU utilization is very high in this title, so you better make sure you have strong central processing unit before purchasing this game, or else you're gonna have a real bad time, even when your graphic card is very strong. Also, there is something messed up because when you change settings without resetting the game, performance will degrade heavily. Reset is truly needed. Lastly, a few words on the interface. It takes too long when exiting menus like map and quest log to get back to gameplay. It feels really sluggish and we could use difficulty description or recommended level in quest log in order to save some time and go on quests that are more appropriate for us at the time, rather than struggle and plow through or turn around and go elsewhere. What else? Ah yes, the audio. So, voice acting is on very high level here. Even if written material is not the best, still the performers have done great job indeed. Brava! When it comes to sound effects and ambient, these are pleasant to the ear. Nicely done as well. Music is quite good, I enjoy it in many cases. Tunes are well picked for the scenes presented, which is important. No wonder when Hans Zimmer was involved in the production of soundtrack. Still, when I turn on music from first 3 games for some variety, it was way better. Felt more emotional, on the brink of hope and desperation, while in Veilguard it almost sounded too nice somehow. I guess the music direction went same as all the other aspects, to more cozy. Call me crazy, but I really feel this way. Okay, so what about bugs, glitches and other technical annoyances that I haven't mentioned yet? Well, loading screens after conversations are a little bit too long. And no, it's not a matter of slow disk. Game was installed on high-speed M2 SSD. But that's a minor gripe. The big one was something more grave for the enjoyment for the player. Some passive effects didn't work at all and some only worked sometimes. Maybe it is patched by now, who knows. I'm not going to go back and check this out. No sir. So now comes the hardest part of any review. Any essay or even for any kind of written text, and when I think about it, for oral speeches as well. I mean the outro, conclusion, summary, ending. No matter how you call it. I always feel like there is something more I could have written or told. Or that I could do it in a better way. But it is a fool's game to chase the impossible, to try taking a shot at perfection. This is not what is meaningful here. We are already lucky enough that we can convey what we feel inside to each other at all. This is a precious gift given to us by Creator, so remember to never underestimate the power of words. Okay, stop preaching already and tell us what you think of the game and if it's worth buying and playing. I hear you suggest aggressively through the screen. Okay then, let me just tell you that in harsh but honest words. If not for a pathetic writing and camera annoyances, this could be a very good game. Instead, it is a missed opportunity and yet another proof that we need to focus on doing things, instead of talking about our feelings all the time, even if we are role-playing as a character in a video game. Enough is enough. The core of the game is good, animations, combat, flow of traversing. Only if someone on executive managing position took their head out of their own ass, we would get a very good game. This is similar to World of Warcraft. It is like comfort food of gaming. You know it is not the best thing for your health, but it makes you feel warm and cozy. Never mind all the annoyances and missed opportunities while you're having some fun. But then you feel worse and worse with every next hour spent with the title. And then you wake up to realize that you are wasting precious time given to you to spend wisely on this plane of existence. You recognize that you have played way better games, that actually positively impacted your life instead of wasting it away. As I said many times, video games beside of being an entertainment are the form of art, and same rules apply to them. They need to be made with passion and love, with understanding and wisdom, with compassion for the receiver, to make their life better, not worse. I could go on like this for hours, but you can understand the point I'm getting at. So much resources wasted, because I see that many talented and honest people work on the project, but they were mismanaged by their superiors and overwhelmed by less gifted colleagues. What a shame for the gaming industry and for us, the players who want good and honest games, in order to enrich our lives, not to make them more miserable. On this serious note that you should really think about, I am leaving you once again, just to meet you in yet another great late review.